back. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. I am in a particularly good mood this week, not just because the weather's good and it's almost baseball season. Well, I'm not in a good mood because of that, but it's March Madness, and I got to skip Indianapolis, and it's usually this cold, long combine week. Usually I gain weight. I lose points on my liver card. But I stopped going, and, my wife sort of points out that I've stopped going to Indianapolis right around the time that Marvin Lewis was no longer coaching in the National Football League. This guy spent the week last week in Indianapolis chasing around young football players on a job search in the National Football League. He is still a football outsider of sorts, and a lead writer at Bleacher Report and BR Gridiron, and you can download their app and check them all out. He's from the fighting city of brotherly love and a one-time math professor to Joe Flacco on the Jersey side of things. We welcome Mike Tanier back on. You can follow him at Mike Tanier. That's Tanier. What's going on, man? You recovering Indianapolis? How's your liver holding up after the Sun King Brewery, man?
Oh, my God, you described the entire thing. It was cold. It was sideways, snowing. I gained weight. My liver, my doctor should not know what went on. We did visit the Sun King Brewery. Mm-hmm. We toured their barrel rooms again. I had nights where I slept maybe 2 or 3 hours. I had nights where I got all the way up to 4 or 5 hours. I was lucky. But, yeah, a lot of information, a lot of chances to meet some of these young men. But you're right. It's an unusual event. It's a little bit grueling, but it's also a lot of fun.
It's meatballs for football people, right? I mean, for people of our era, right?
Someone called it summer camp. It's summer camp for the coaches and the scouts and the GMs. You see them at these high-end steakhouses holding court with a scotch in their hand. That's part of the point. You kind of go there and you haunt them and you chit-chat with them a little bit, and sometimes you get a little whisper in your ear, and most of the time it's a lie. But they get that. We try to do our sort of like media version of that where, we see guys we don't see. We see once or twice the entire year. We get together. We're chit-chatting with our own scotches in our hand, and sometimes it's super productive, but sometimes it's a little bit like meatballs.
I love how you say, and they lie to us.
Yeah.
I've been outside of St. Elmo's more times than Mike Tyson, that's for sure.
Hey now.
I would say for this year for the Ravens, and I haven't had you on in a while, maybe since Lamar Mania, back before that tragic loss to the Titans, which seems like years ago, was less than 8 weeks ago, right? So It's amazing how this thing stacks up and goes away. But the Ravens feel like they're closer to winning than anyone. Feels like they have the cheap quarterback. They have all these moving parts. They got Judon they have to worry about, and maybe Yonda. But it always feels like when I talk to guys like you, and I will do that all week long, that you think, well, DeCosta, Harbaugh, they sort of know what they're doing over there. Ortiz, they'll figure it out. They have all their draft picks. They're going to get compensatory. They got cap money. Beware of the Ravens. They will pick good football players at the end of April.
Yeah, that's it. The national story, and I think it's been kind of grained into us really over 20 years from Ozzie Newsome through to the newer regime here, which is pretty much the same regime. And it's that they've got a plan, they've got a process. They don't make all the right decisions, but they do things. They come about their decisions always in the right way. You're never going to have 100% hit rate, but there's a logic to it. And that's where they are now. What I like to say is it's a lot easier to go from 5-11 to like 11-5 or 12-4 and 13-3. Than it is to take that next level up, going from, the division round to the championship round to the Super Bowl to winning the Super Bowl. Those steps are like their own steps almost along the way. So they're in great shape. And yet the question becomes, how do you hone the knife to get that next level? It's easy to say, 5-11, get a better, the edge rusher, get a better cornerback, get a better offensive lineman, and we'll be 11-5. Now it's like, where do you get that marginal gain that takes you to that next level?
Dude, we ain't never been 14-2, right? So I am promising everybody around here, next year's going to disappoint you. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to lose once a month or twice a month next year. And if you didn't like 14-2, and if you weren't excited by being awake at 11-15 and the Ravens are winning 45-6 in some place called Los Angeles where they never played football before, these were the nights. I guess the thing for Lamar is he will keep you awake, after halftime, even when you're winning by 3 touchdowns, because Harbaugh will play him and he will run and he will gun. And I know what a run and gun gangster you are in the modern era. In totality, what do you make of the Lamar factor when you're out in Indianapolis, especially for Hurts or for someone out there that maybe someone would think a little bit more, when it comes to the next Deshaun Watson or the next RG3?
You know what? I think that Lamar Jackson, and to a degree Deshaun Watson, and to a degree Patrick Mahomes, they've opened up the conversation for some of these younger quarterbacks of like, forget this whole, oh, he has to move to wide receiver. Oh, forget this. Oh, he's only been in shotgun. Oh, he's a scrambler. He's going to get hurt. And it's changed because the change is very clearly, if you have a good plan for this, you could rocket into the top of the charts in your second season. That's what both Lamar did and Patrick Mahomes did. And so, for a guy like Jalen Hurts, you're watching him throw the ball in these sessions. Like, yes, this is a person who can play quarterback very well and can run. So what is our plan moving forward? Are we got to get a guy like him? Maybe not go all the way the way the Ravens went with that kind of system, but a system where there are some read options in there and things like that mixed in with something more conventional and maybe less of that West Coast offense. Hey, it takes 3 years to learn that. I think Hurts is a beneficiary of that. I think Jordan Love from Utah State is to a degree a beneficiary of that this year, where teams are going to look at him and say, hey, he's kind of messy mechanically. He can run, he can throw, he sometimes goes YOLO and launches the ball down there. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes did that. You put him on the bench for a year, you have Andy Reid, Alex Smith talk to him, he comes out, all right? You take Lamar Jackson, you get Harbaugh, you get Flacco to a little degree, you hone it a little bit, you give it some time, and it comes out. Teams are saying we can kind of make this work quickly, and there's more interest in that now than hey, it's Jake Fromm. He's tall. He was in the SEC. He can sit in the pocket.
He looks like Matt Ryan. He's a poor man's Joe Flacco.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of goes to one side. And the reality is you can win more quickly and be more effective if you take more of a risk that comes in on the other side.
Yeah, I ran into Kyle Bowler on my Hawaiian vacation 4 months ago. Yeah, in the pool. I mean, it was crazy. And when you think of the prototypical guy, that was the guy, right?
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking, was he in the pool? Did he throw a 60-yard pass while he was completely submerged?
No, man, he was hanging out with his kids, having a great time, splashing around. He looked up and found me, and he's thinking, I thought I was in Maui. Now Nestor's in the pool, So actually, I love Kyle Bowler, and, he's selling real estate in Southern California. From a global perspective of what the combine is and how it's changed and what teams are looking for now and where I guess where the sweet spot in all of this is. Boy, the Ravens and the Belichicks, they really have figured this thing out that third, fourth, fifth round, that's where all the value is, getting more picks there, that all of the ideology has changed. I mean, remember back when you had one of the top 5 picks and you would dangle it and people would, Mike Ditka would crush his cigar between his feet and offer you the whole draft, or Dan Snyder would, find the next Wheaties box in his mind, right? That doesn't happen anymore, and the value of the charts and the dealing and everything that goes on, that there's really an art form about this. And when I talk to anybody smart like you about this, there really is something for Bisciotti, and let's say for the Steelers, the Eagles, these organizations that have had complete stability, even the Saints for a long time now. And when you have the coach that's making the $10 million or whatever, that when the organization's been together 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, and they're not in different gym suits every time they're in Indianapolis every year, there really becomes the ability to have a system. And there are 5 or 6 or 7 franchises that have a system, and then there's every Miami Dolphins and Cleveland Browns who can't get out of their own way every 12 months, and they don't even know what they're looking for. Part of this is it really is an art form that isn't dumb luck and throwing darts and watching a lot of film. There's a lot more that goes into it, and I think the Ravens proved that this year by building a system around a kid no one wanted and being able to take different kinds of football players than whatever the prototypical 6'6", 290, big arm, defensive, whatever that thing is that is a bucket, that if you can work around those buckets and find Pat Ricards that can play for you and tight ends out of Delaware that can get off the block, right? I think it creates a different way and a different philosophy for the way you go about picking football players, right?
Yeah, and maybe in that top 3 or 4, it's like, well, Chase Young is coming. Yeah, you jump on Chase Young because there are a couple of guys, usually maybe it's 4, 5, 6 guys at the top. Like, you can't get an athlete this good anywhere else. Okay, so that's one little spin, and you go that way. Then there's everyone else, and there's from pick 7 to pick 230, and that's where you have like your Ravens and your Patriots. I mean, look, you get the Ravens. You had one coach for 13 years. You had one general manager, organizational flow chart. Ever. With the same guy. So the scouts know what the coaches want. The deputy GM knows what the coaches want and what the scouts want. The coordinators pretty much, because they've been working, it's been different guys, but there's always like a turnover. They know what the coaches want. They know what the scouts want. This is a vast advantage. It's not sexy. It's not a fun thing to talk about, but this is an advantage. When a scout is going out there and he's at Winston-Salem State, or he's, looking at the backups 2 years down the road at Alabama, he's like, these are the guys we draft, not that guy, but that guy. When I put this scouting report in, it's going to go up to the top, down to the bottom, and it's going to be the one that shines. And we know this guy's a fourth-round pick, and we can get him. And in 2 years, when he gets out of college, it'll still be the same guys picking. This is a huge advantage that the Ravens have, that the Patriots have, a few other teams have. You talk about teams like the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins got their act together maybe this year, but it still holds true. That scout is out there. The GM who hired him was gone. The coach that he's picking players for is not the coach that the GM selected. So, it's like, hey, I identified the fourth-round pick from Winston-Salem State, who I think is going to be a star. Who cares? That's not the guy we want. We don't want a 3-4 anymore. We run a 4-3. We don't want tall wide receivers. We want tiny slot receivers. And by the time you adjust to that, then the next guy comes in. He wants tall wide receivers in a 4-3 or 3-4 again.
Well, everybody wants a linebacker who's a safety now all of a sudden, right?
They do, and I don't think that's a ridiculous trend. I think some teams are just discovering that. But yeah, the Ravens might want that.
I remember when no one wanted Ray Lewis 20 years ago because he was too small. Now he'd be too big.
Right. You want to be ahead of these curves. Everybody's going to want, like, good example. You talked about the tight end who gets off the block. Everybody's going to be looking now for these tight ends who are more like the Ravens tight ends. So it's like, oh yeah, you can sort of play fullback a little bit and be H-back a little bit. And we can constrict our formation. So everybody's bunched up together because that helps the fast guys get to the outside because the defenders aren't there because they're all bunched in with these guys. So you want to be ahead of these curves. I don't think it's ridiculous to want like a big safety or a small linebacker or whatever, but you want to be 2 steps ahead, not 2 steps behind, and just discovering this and trying to go get Isaiah Simmons. And you don't have the top 7 pick or whatever, so you can't get him. Get me the next best thing to Isaiah Simmons, and there is none. That's not out there, so you wind up flailing and grabbing a guy who ran fast and looked big.
He is my favorite run-and-gun gangster. He is Mike Tanier. You can find him out at Bleacher Report and BR Gridiron. Make sure you're checking out the app there as well. As always, the co-author, the Football Outsiders Almanac. We had your other fellas by at the Super Bowl about 6 weeks ago. I'll reach out to Aaron and the rest of the Indy crew. Also a book called The Long Snappers Blues. And most famously, Tanier in Baltimore, you will always be Joe Flacco's algebra teacher. And that's just the way it works over in Haddonfield. So for the Ravens and the season in totality and how it all worked out in the end, and Patrick Mahomes gets to tote they had the parade, they had all of that stuff. Where do you sit on all of this? I mean, the Ravens in the division alone will be the favorite this year. They'll be a favorite in the league. I mean, it's weird, dude. I'm 25 years into this. We're used to being the hunter, not the hunted. We're the 10-6 little engine that's chasing the Bengals or chasing the Steelers or whatever. And the Bengals are going to be the rage of all of this with Burrow, right? And the Browns were going to win the Super Bowl this time last year, and now they're in mayhem. And the Steelers have a quarterback that my wife looked at Ben Roethlisberger on the sidelines at December and said, he looks fat and old. I said, shh. I've been saying that for 15 years, honey. Don't say that about Ben Roethlisberger. So this is the offseason where we spend the next 8 months flexing our muscles and saying, hey, let's make our plans for Tampa. That worries me. It worried me for the Browns last year. Things almost went too well for the Ravens last year until it went thud.
Yeah, and that kind of happened with the Chiefs the previous year. And you can kind of look at that and say, the Chiefs had this year where, Mahomes is the talk of the town and the talk of the NFL, and he goes out there, you lose to the Patriots, and that's the end. And then they come back next year and win the Super Bowl. This is a process. You shouldn't be you tend to be pessimistic when you're on top because all fans love that underdog mentality. When you're up by 2 touchdowns, you're like, oh, my God, what if something goes wrong? That's how tons of fans, especially us East Coast people, that's how we think.
Dude, we were 14-2. We didn't win anything. I mean, we didn't win anything. We didn't even have any fun at the playoff game. Like, it sucked.
No.
So, all of that went into a black hole, and now you got to pound sand on it 8 months. And I don't know if you've heard, dude, but I know you watch baseball. We got the Orioles, so things are slow around here when the turtles aren't dribbling. You know what I mean? So for us, everything's about the Ravens around here, and it's just, free agency's next week. We got the draft coming up. But, man, we can't win again until September, and all you can do from 14-2 is go backwards.
You're right, and you can't really win in free agency because you're going to be working mostly on your own guys. Maybe you grab a guy. You're not going to necessarily win the draft because you're picking whatever, like your 30th, 29th, wherever you are. So you're not going to get that like adrenaline fix that the Browns get every year. Look who we drafted. You don't get to get all of that and thump around on Twitter about how brilliant it was. So you have to recognize your infrastructure is incredibly sound, that you've got the MVP at your quarterback position. That
sounds good. Say that twice. I didn't think we have the MVP at the quarterback, but I've never, that's good. I like that. I like hearing that in the offseason.
Right. You have a really good offensive line. You have a system that we talked about that has a succession game so that the third round pick last year isn't a bust if he didn't play. The fifth round pick from 2 years ago isn't a bust if he didn't play. He could be rising up and he could be the guy you're trying to franchise in 2-3 years. So you have all those things in place. And I don't know what to tell you if you're an everyday fan. Go play Madden. If you're like, oh my God, I'm worried about the Ravens falling off to 12-4, go play Madden. Go load up Lamar Jackson, have him run the option a million times and kill everybody in sight, and just be patient and wait because this is what it's like near the top. This is like at the top. And if you're looking for evidence that you can go from darlings of the league to Super Bowl champions, even in a year where you lost more games or your quarterback got hurt for 3 games, you're looking for example. Look at the Chiefs. Look at what they accomplished. And the Ravens are capable of doing the same thing.
Mike, for you with the quarterback thing, every time we go out to Indianapolis, it's, well, this guy's going to rise, and, where's this quarterback going to go, and is Joe Burrow going to accept his assignment to Cincinnati and all that?
Yeah.
But the quarterback movement and the amount of seats to fill it for every, Jacksonville Jaguars out there, there's going to be a lot of movement the next 10 days, and it's going to be a little strange as to where some of these guys wind up and who's buying what seat at the, the rookie at the rookie orchestra in the top 5, top 6 as to where some of these guys are going to go, right?
We never have seen anything like this. The closest thing was, I guess it was 2012 or 2010 when Peyton Manning went on his world tour. But that was just Peyton Manning on his world tour, and he winds up in Denver. This is Tom Brady on a world tour, Phillip Rivers on a world tour, Teddy Bridgewater, Cam Newton on the trading block, Jameis Winston, and then you've got these rookie quarterbacks. So you can't figure out, if you look at the musical chairs, there's more quarterbacks than chairs, which is rare. There are more veterans and top rookies out there than there are necessarily jobs that need filling. So it's unprecedented, and it's almost impossible to handicap. I think all of us are saying, oh, Rivers is going to the Colts. They've already had talks. Okay, that's fine. You pencil one in there. So do they get Rivers, and then do they get a rookie too? Because I would get a rookie and Rivers if I'm the Colts. I'm not expecting Phillip Rivers to be good 2 years from now. So you have all of these
come on.
factors.
It's not like he's 43 or something. Come on.
Right, and he threw a bunch of interceptions in the fourth quarters of games when he was trying to come back last year. No way that's a danger sign. But in terms of the rookies, it's also unusual because usually we have 2 guys and we're like, who's number 1, who's number 2? And this year it's like Burrow's number 1 and 2 is hurt. And because 2 is hurt, he can't gain ground. You can't put a lot of traction into the idea that he's going to go out in this pro day and crush it. He might go out in this pro day and throw wiffle balls. We have no idea exactly where that's going to go. They're 1 and 2, so 1 is set. 2 is set and isn't going to do anything. Then you got Justin Herbert, Oregon, and I talked a little bit about Jordan Love from Utah State. And they're 3 and 4, and they're stuck there at 3 and 4. And then there's everybody else. Hurts, I would put in everybody else. He's probably at the top of everybody else. And
by the way, Lamar Jackson was everybody else this time 2 years ago, though, right?
He was everybody else, but he was also in the white elephant category. He was in that, is he a receiver? Oh, he's special. Oh, the Heisman winner, but is he this, is he that? There's no guy like that. Maybe it's Hurts, but not really, because I don't think anybody puts Hurts in the Lamar Jackson category in terms of a runner or anything else like that. So yeah, the everybody else category is full of guys like Jake Fromm, and the young man Gordon from Washington, and then some of these other guys that if you're on Twitter a lot, all these guys who thump the draft on Twitter are going to tell you over, this is my super double deluxe sleeper, and then the next day another guy's going to be their super double deluxe sleeper, and then when one of them does Gardner Minshew next year and starts 4 games and looks okay,
I told you.
They're gonna retweet. Look what I said. Look what I said in February, and they got 37 tweets down there that they didn't put in with all the other guys. And they're all nice kids. They all can throw the ball a little. They're all better than you and me at quarterback, but nobody to get excited about. So you can't really look at this rookie class and say, oh, let's talk about the quarterbacks to generate excitement and mayhem. You can do that with the wide receivers, but you can't do that with the quarterbacks. Luckily, we got Tom Brady, and he's going to generate all the mayhem and over-the-top attention and hype and craziness that we could possibly ask for.
Mike Tanier was in Indianapolis last week. Lucky him, drinking beer along with all of my scouting friends and football friends. I decided to skip it and just call y'all this week and next week and have you on the show and say, what did I miss besides the smoke in the bars after 1 a.m. in Indianapolis? It's just so weird. It's like a big casino. Indianapolis is when we're out there, a freezing ass casino as well.
Yes.
For you with what happens out there now and the scouts that come through and where we are, any takeaways in the larger scope of this other than they're going to try to move it to L.A. and Vegas down the line and bigger and better and made for TV and all of that? Is there anything you glean from being there that I couldn't figure out from watching the NFL Network?
Let's see. They plan to move it to Vegas or LA. I think that's coming. We've been saying that since I started going there like 11 years ago, but it's really imminent. One of the factors of that is there were a lot of complaints about running the 40s later. Running 40s in the evening when the athlete has sort of been up all day trying to stay stretched out and all, and also some guys were running 40s after they did jumping drills and position drills, and some guys before. Well, hello. Obviously, if you've done a bunch of other exercise, you go to run the 40, that's got to be a couple hundredths of a second difference, a little bit slower because you've been running around a lot, and that's something that goes permanently on your record. So when you look at that and say, well, what's the solution for wanting to do this in prime time and have these guys run at 7? Is put them in Los Angeles when they're running at 4. And then they're running at 7 on the East Coast, and then the problem is solved there. So it's not something anyone wants, but it's something that we're looking at and that the NFL is looking at. And the other thing is, with this schedule, you saw a lot less of coaches. You saw a lot less of assistant coaches. You were talking about the bar scene. Used to be like you'd see them on the bar scene at midnight. Now I can't get out that much later. You say, a couple of them were out at 2, 3 in the morning. Obviously, they got to watch drills. They got to have meetings, so they're out later. And a couple of teams didn't bring their assistant coaches. A few didn't bring their head coaches. They sent director of scouting, and it's like
Well, John Harbaugh wasn't there because he's in a cast, but yeah.
And then it's like, well, the conference call the next morning, and everything's on film, and the director of scouting was there. And again, that's the Ravens. Everybody delegates their authority and has relationships that go back 15 years. So it's like, okay, I got it. I'm at my cast. I can recoup here and eat a salad and look at the film. So that means it gets smaller. And they move it to L.A., then a lot of us in the media will be like, okay, we can't just walk to St. Elmo's in Prime 47. We got to get in a cab. We got to get in a Uber. Maybe that's not worth it. Our bosses are going to say it's going to cost 2.5 times as much, and there's less guys for you to talk to. That's not worth it. We could see a very different combine in a couple of years where they're running everything on TV.
There's no doubt they'll screw it up. They've screwed everything else up, right? I mean... Yeah. I just got back from the Super Bowl, and it's very, very obvious they don't even want the media there. You know what I mean? Like, it's an NFL.com presentation, as the Vegas draft will be. I mean, I'm out on the West Coast 2 days before the draft, and I was thinking of going to Vegas, and I'm thinking, what's made for TV? Why don't let us watch it on TV? You know what I mean?
Yeah, everything is made for TV in the draft. Absolutely. It's not like you get a guy and get meaningful conversations with them.
Yeah.
And the Super Bowl you just talked about, that was ridiculous. And the combine is the one where it's like, the everybody's at the same watering hole. It's the Serengeti, and the antelopes are there, and the lions are there, and the pigeons are there. And we're all doing the same thing. And I don't think the NFL in charge, Goodell and his guys, they don't care one way or another. They just want to make some money, put it on TV. But you got guys at that sort of general manager level who's like, you know what, I can afford to go to a steakhouse where it's not overflowing to capacity, and where there's not a guy from Bleacher Report here and a guy from the LA Times there and a guy from ESPN over there.
Well, in LA, you just disappear. Yeah, in Indianapolis, there's nowhere to run.
There's nowhere to run. Now, for every person who likes that, there's a bunch of GMs who are like, I like it. You said some of them might have a girl there. Others, it might be like, well, you know what? I just enjoy just being able to walk someplace and seeing. I see the guys from here. I know my friends from the Titans are going to be there, and my friends from the Steelers are going to be there. Whatever. So it's fluid, but the bottom line is there's money. There's now a campus in LA that's like NFL's campus that they're going to need to fill. It can't just be we're there and it's Daniel Jeremiah running around. It's got to be filled with activities and things like that. And I have a feeling they're going to move a lot of things there, keeps it more in-house, then you can like make it more expensive for me to get there. Like I say, that's a factor. And next thing you know, you're not getting, and what they lose is these weird little, if you people read my stuff on the BR app on Bleacher Report, I'm interviewing guys who swam with sharks. I'm interviewing guys who are like portrait painters in their free time. You're a linebacker and you're a portrait painter, et cetera. You lose all of that because nobody has time to run in there. Everybody who goes there has got to run in and say, Joe Burrow, are you going to quit football forever if the Bengals trade? No, you're not. Okay. And then they have to run back.
Well, I miss it already from the days of the old Hoosier Dome and the, running into. But it's not the same event. Luke and I have decided to skip it and watch it on TV, and I'm living happily ever after. We play in Indianapolis this year, so I got to go out there once already this year. So that's enough chicken and waffles for me, dude. Appreciate you, man. And I know you're gearing up for free agency next week. Tell me what you're doing out at Bleacher Report and up there in Philly now that you've given up algebra for a living.
You're right. I'm on Bleacher Report. You can find me on the BR app. Download the BR app, especially before March Madness. It's absolutely free. It has all your favorite writers. You can pick your favorite teams. You can go in there and you can click Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson and Maryland Terrapins and basketball and football, et cetera, et cetera. And your favorite writers like Matt Miller, Mike Freeman, Ty Dunn, me, Mike Tanier. And you can do all that. Right now, we are gearing up for free agency. Right now, I was putting together some free agent wish lists. And if people go on the app, they'll find there's a wish list there for all the quarterbacks in the NFL, including Lamar Jackson.
We don't need a quarterback. We got a quarterback.
No, what we got is gifts for them. I got a special gift that will help him along, and you can find out who that is. And I got gifts for Carson Wentz and other guys as well. So that's all on Bleacher Report. On the BR app.
Let me guess. Your wish is a 6'3", 4'2" receiver for Lamar Jackson. Is that right?
Maybe it's a receiver. It's a receiver. It's not a 6'3", 4'2" receiver. It's a receiver that will help in a couple of ways to help the young man take that next step.
All right. Well, the next step's 15-1. The next step's winning a game in January, which starts to get a little heavy, right?
Yep. That's it. And that's what we talked about a little bit. Maybe a little more playoff experience in the rooms is something that could help.
If Marvin would have won games in January, I'd still be drinking in Indianapolis, but don't tell my wife. See you soon. She already knows. Mike Tanier joining us here. Bleacher Report, the running gun gangster out of South Philly on the Jersey side, and just one of my favorites to follow. The author of Long Snappers Blues and an all-around decent fellow and math teacher to Joe Flacco. Mike Tanier, that's Tanier. Follow him on Twitter. Tens of thousands do. You can find me out on WNST.net and Nasty at WNST.net and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and anywhere but St. Elmo's. Maybe St. Elmo's Fire, but not St. Elmo's Steakhouse. My eyes are still watering from the shrimp sauce from 2006. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking hot sauce and Baltimore sports.